Good afternoon, everyone. And we're back in Exodus chapter 26 right here. And right before we start, I want to draw our attention back to last week because the next couple of chapters actually all builds itself from two verses in chapter 25. And let me just revise that just very quickly. The two verses starts from verse 8 and verse 9. And I mentioned last week that it was important for us to be very clear that God had instructed Moses and thereby instruct the rest of the Israelites to make me a sanctuary. And the word sanctuary here is mikdash. Sanctuary really means a sacred place. That's all it means. It means that this is a place where it is designated as special. We call it holy. That it is set apart. It's for God's purpose. And that would be a sanctuary. And by sanctuary, it could mean a number of things. It could mean the area that God has designated, not just the structure, but the entire perimeter. The perimeter could be the walls that surround the courtyard and place like that. And so let's at this point in time is just to designate a place within where the Israelites are, that God calls it his place, a special place. And God says, I may dwell among them or in the midst of them. That's the word. In the midst means in the middle of them. Now later, when we get into other books, you will find that this particular sanctuary is designated in the middle where the people are actually arranged all around it. And so the sanctuary is literally in the middle of the encampment. However, the next part that I wanted to remind us is that God wants them to do according to all that I will show you. The pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings. And the tabernacle is a different word. The tabernacle is mishkan. Mishkan. And so Mishkan means a dwelling place. Which means that in this mikdash, or the sanctuary described right here, there is a mishkan, a dwelling place. And within the mishkan, there are apparatus and furnishings that you need to put in place. So this entirety is a sacred place. It is not meant for people to fool around, and it's a very sacred, special place. But what I wanted to point out is it's according to all that God shows, the pattern, the blueprint, the character, the color, the details, and so you shall make it. Now that's the background of chapters 25 and today, chapter 26. And so when we come to chapter 26, it is now speaking about the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Now the tabernacle is a dwelling place. Mishkan, a dwelling place. Basically, what you can tell is that God is building a a place of abode, right? His little tent in the midst of all their tent. Since they are dwelling there, God is dwelling in the middle of them. So it is that kind of an imagery that God is saying, I am going to live amongst you. I'm going to live in the middle of your camp. Now, today we have about close to 40 verses, but we will very quickly get past that because we are not going to spend too much time on the details, but we'll just unpack some of the words. The tabernacle is the focus in chapter 26. It is God's dwelling place. So remember, God's dwelling place. So if it's God's house, God's rules. And he will decide how he wants his house, his mishkan, basically. And this is a very important concept. He wants them to do exactly as told. Nothing more, nothing less. This is not a free will design. They may have an ability to design within the framework that God has set for them, but it is still within the blueprint that God has decided. Why? His house, his rules, his ways. And he wants it in 10 curtains that is hanging down, made of woven, not embroidered. Woven means you actually weave the thread together with linen thread, blue, purple, and scarlet. And then with artistic designs of cherubim to weave them. Now, this is interesting because this idea of fashion actually means to produce them. And now, why is it called woven? Because that is how the fine linen will twist. The word woven here, let me change the color, means to twist. And that's the idea of woven, right? Now, the idea of weave here comes from the twisting, but it actually uses the word make. But because it is using woven threads, and so the artistic designs of cherubim will be made into the cloth or the curtains. Now, the word curtain here really means a drape. Means it is a long stretch that hangs down. So it's all about hanging. And so God wants it done in a particular manner. Now, perhaps the artistic design would be, how should we say, would be, well, left for a bit of artistic work. The word designs here, the artistic design literally means a piece of work. And this piece of work in this case is, by context, it is actually woven. But what I wanted to draw your attention to is this cherubim. Cherubim is first seen in Genesis chapter 3, where God set the cherubim to guard the entrance on the east of the Garden of Eden. And then he held a sword, a cheref, the flaming sword, to protect the tree of life. Now, the cherubim is plural, meaning it's more than one cherub. And the question that we might want to ask is, how would they know how a cherub look like? Well, they must have, because the cherub is going to be part of the design. We don't know today, but I'm sure they knew exactly how, because God told them how to do it. The length, 28 cubits. The width, 4 cubits. Every one of the drapes shall have the same measurement, so there'll be equal size design. 5 curtains shall be coupled, and this one is united. I guess you can say joined, right? So it's not one huge piece, but many big pieces sewn together. Right? That's what it means. And the other 5 curtains shall also be coupled to one another. So in 10 curtains, there'll be 5 and 5. And you shall make loops. In verse 4, when we talk about loops, just know that these are, well, in modern day terms, curtain hooks. And it's made of cloth, blue yarn on the edge. Now, the word edge here actually means the lip of the curtain. The lip, and the word here is safa. And those of you who are studying Hebrew, pay, the word pay or fay, denotes the lips. So this is safa of the curtain, the lips or the edge of the curtain. So there is a finishing at the edge so it can be hooked up. And likewise, you shall do the outer edge of the curtain of the second set. So 2 sets. 50 loops to hook. So there is a specific number. For 50 loops on the edge on the second set. And that the loops may be clasped to one another. And so in verse 5, when it says clasp to one another, is that it will be joined. Yeah? It will be joined to one another. And you shall make 50 clasps of gold and couple the curtains together with the clasps. Now, what are clasps? Verse 6. And this will be hooks. These are clasps. These are hooks. And so these loops will be curtain hooks where it's meant to hold up the curtain. This would be the hooks itself. And guess what kind of color? It's gold. It's made of gold. Lots of gold in the Mishkan, right? Now, verse 7 tells us what covers the tent. The tent is another word that is used for the Mishkan. And so the tent is actually called an ohel. That's a tent, which means that the Mishkan is the concept of the place, a dwelling place. And the Mishkan is designed as a tent, right? There will be a tent that is going to cover over the Mishkan. So we are learning 2 Hebrew words. And so there is a curtain of goat's hair that's going to cover over it, and there will be 11 of them. Each shall be 30 cubits, width shall be 4 cubits, and the 11 curtains shall have exactly the same measurement, which means that they are identical. And you shall couple 5 curtains by themselves, 6 curtains by themselves, that makes 11. And you shall double over the 6, and it overlaps at the forefront of the tent. So the what essentially you will find will be something like this. If this is the tent, and so we would have 11 sets, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then the 11th set will be in front of the Mishkan. Now, when you look at the rest of the words here, you shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost, one set, 50 loops on the edge of the curtain, second set. So on each curtain, there will be 50 on the top, 50 on the bottom. You shall make 50 bronze hooks. Now this time is bronze, just now was gold. And this is for the outside. The inside is gold, the outside is bronze. So people won't see the value of the outside. And you couple the tent together, the ohel together, that it may be one, the remnant that remains of the curtain of the tent, half the curtain shall hang over the back of the tabernacle. A cubit on one side and a cubit on the other. What remains on the length of the curtains of the tent shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle on this side to cover it. So the tent actually covers the Mishkan. So let me just try to draw this out. So you find that you have the tabernacle. We haven't talked about the tabernacle specifics yet, but we are only talking about how the cloth and the tent is used. So we have cloth here with hooks. And then on the outside, there is the cloth and there are hooks here as well, right? And so that's what it means by hang over it. And so this is the ohel. And this is the Mishkan, right? The tabernacle. Now the tabernacle itself in verse 14 says that you need to make a covering that covers the Mishkan using ram skins dyed red. Now you need to understand that the dyeing of red uses some natural means, right? This is not chemical. For the ohel that is going to cover the Mishkan. And then after the ram skin, you would use some badger skins over it. So now we're talking about one layer, and then we have a second layer right on top. Now the red one, I think we will call it ram. And the blue layer that's on top, that's called badger. Now we don't really know what it is, but we'll just call it badger. Right? It could be a dugong or a sheep or some antelope, but badger is good. And then for the tabernacle, you should make boards of acacia wood, standing upright, which means that what I had initially drawn for you was this, and these are all made of acacia wood standing upright. And this is the wall. That's what it means, right? This is the wall. Ten cubits shall be the length of the board, and a cubit and a half width. So every board is like this: 10 cubits, 1.5 cubits, right? That's basically the instructions. Then 2 tenons. Now, what is a tenon? Interestingly, the tenon is actually what should you call it? It is actually a hand width in each board for binding one to another. All right. So this is a tenon. It is a hand width, Remember, they don't have measuring sticks, right? They use reeds. They use ropes to measure. So when you miss the mark, they use a rope to see how far you have missed. So right now, why are all these instructions so important? That the Israelites and Moses do not khatat, do not miss the exact measurements that God has given. Why? Because it's God's house, God's rules. And so this is how you shall make for all the boards. You make the boards for the tabernacle, 20 boards for the south side, and then you shall make 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards, and the 2 sockets under each board for 2 tenons, for the 2 hand hooks. And for the north side, there'll be 20 boards, and exactly the same, right? And then the far side of the tabernacle, west of it, 6 boards. And you make 2 boards for the 2 back corners of the tabernacle. Now, what does all this mean? It means this very simply. There are 20 boards. And then there are 6 boards. Right? And then there are 20 boards. And remember, the direction of the boards is interesting. So we have this as west, this is north, and this is south. And where do you think the entrance is? East. And so what is important for us to realize that is that the every time you see the directions or the compass bearings in Hebrew terms, the face of a person always faces east. That is the opening, the face of the tabernacle. The face of the temple always faces east. No matter where they go, it will face east. And so the north will always be the left hand. So if you see a person, 2 hands, we have the left hand and the right hand, and the face is the front, which is the east. And so what is the far side? It would be the west. And that's how we understand all these locations. Then we come to the next important element, which is the bars of acacia wood. 5 for the boards on one side and 5 for the other side. The 5 bars for the boards of the side of the tabernacle and the far side westward. The middle bar shall pass through the midst of the board from end to end. You shall overlay the boards with the gold rings as holders for the bars, and overlay the bars with gold. So the insides are all gold. You shall raise up the tabernacle. Now notice this is very important. It says, according to its pattern, which you were shown on the mountain. The tabernacle is a hard construction. Now, what is going to happen is now the description of the insides. Now, on the insides of the tabernacle, you shall make a veil woven. In verse 31, the word woven means to make, as in verse 2. But this is in context, right? This is in context, the type of cloth and how God wanted it as an artistic design, as what they make of woven linen, of the artistic design of a cherubim. So this is all woven into a cloth. And then you shall hang it upon 4 pillars of acacia wood laid with gold. just remember the insides of the tabernacle is gold, everything. Last week we looked at the showbread table. We looked at the menorah. We looked at the incense table. They're all gold. Today we are looking at the insides of the tabernacle. It's also gold. All right. And you shall hang the veil from the clasps. And then you shall bring the ark of the testimony there behind the veil. So the veil shall be divided between the holy place and the most holy. Now, look at these words in verse 33. The holy place means that this is the Kodesh. And then the most holy place is actually Kodesh HaKodeshim, right? Kodesh HaKodeshim. So let me write this down. This would be Kodesh HaKodeshim. Basically, the most holy of all the holy places. And then God says, you put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony. That's the covering we saw last week. In the most holy place, or what we call the Holy of Holies, you shall set the table outside the veil. That would be the showbread table. The lampstand across from the table, on the side of the tabernacle toward the south, and the table on the north side. What does that mean? You find that if this is the tabernacle, then we have a veil, and this is the most holy, and this is the holy, right? And this would be north, south, west, and east. And so the Ark of the Covenant will be here, and then the showbread table is here, and then you find the menorah here. That's how we understand the text. Now, the last segment is this. You shall make a screen for the door of the tabernacle, which is the front part, which is the eastern part. Blue, purple colored and fine woven linen made by a weaver. Now, in verse 36, it gets more specific. The one who actually weaves, who can mix all these threads together. And you shall make for the screen 5 pillars of acacia wood, overlay them with gold. Their hooks shall be gold, cast in 5 sockets of bronze for them. So what does that mean? It means this, right in front. So let me just draw the front. Now we are at the front. So the front shall have 5 pillars, correct? And the 5 pillars is laid out. 1, 2, and then smaller pillars perhaps. Five pillars. And then what we have is we have a cloth that is hung on there. Okay? And it is woven. It is woven. But the front doesn't have the cherubim. Only the curtain that separated the Holy of Holies from the holy place has a cherubim. And so with this, we come to the end of chapter 26. Now, the reason why I wanted to finish this a bit earlier is because I wanted to show you some pictures. how that may look like, because it's hard to imagine. And this is exactly how God wants them to do it. Follow all the details. So the question that you may want to ask yourself is this: what happens when you don't make all these numbers? What happens when you don't follow this? And it is called a khatat. It's a miss. That is a sin. God tells you exactly what to do and you don't do it, that's a sin. And that these are all lessons that's all embodied here. Now, the other thing that I never did, and you may have heard other people do, is the imagery of trying to associate what red means, what the badger skin means, what this number means. I don't do that. The reason, because I'm here just trying to teach you the text itself. These kind of association is not common, not even in Jewish terms. But it seems to be very common in how many speakers teach about the tabernacle. So, but I tend to stay away from it. But just understand that the principle that God gave so many details is that it is God's tabernacle. And so it must be done God's way. This is something which I hope to drum into all of us as we go along, because God doesn't give us the free will to design what is for Him. He knows what He wants, and He tells us what He wants. And His people, in this case, as we read in the narrative, that Moses has seen and is to communicate with the Israelites, that they too will do exactly as God wants. This is the entire picture. Now, if this is for God, won't they want to do it exactly as He says? And the answer is obviously yes. And so this should apply to us as well, that we should do exactly as what God says. Now, I hope you can see this on your screen. The location I'm showing you is called Shiloh. This was the place where, as the Israelites entered into the promised land, God showed them a place where they would park the tabernacle, and it's on top of a hill called Shiloh. And this place, I would show you, this place is where they believe the sanctuary, right? And by sanctuary, we're talking about the mikdash is to be, and there you have the tabernacle, and that would be your Mishkan. And over the Mishkan would be your Ohel, right? Would be your Ohel. Now, you may not see everything, but this is an important picture. This is Shiloh, and if you had a chance to go there, this really impresses us that this was the place where God had first appointed for His mikdash to be placed. Now, in the souvenir shop there at Shiloh, they were selling this, very expensive, so I couldn't afford it, and I decided to take pictures of it. And this is supposedly a replica of how the whole tabernacle area looks like in a possible reconstruction. Of interest, you should look at this one here. You would find that, you see, this is a slope right? Exodus chapter 20, it needs to slope up to the altar, right? The altar should have 4 horns. And so they slaughter the animals here. And this is the wash basin or the laver. This would be the tabernacle itself, overlaid with a tent. Now, inside Shiloh, there is a place where they show what we call a hologram movie. A hologram movie is quite interesting because all 4 sides is looking into a little glass box that they will show you all these moving pictures. And what you see here, these are all hologram. And so we get to see the place, and it's well described. This is how basically it looks like, a bit clearer. Now, this is a place where I haven't been, but it is in the Negev desert, right down south, at a place called Timnah Park. And in Timnah Park, you have a life-size tabernacle, and this is how it looks like, right? It's a life-size tabernacle. When you take a closer look at it, this is basically how you find it. You see 5 poles right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then these are the tents, tent coverings, right? This is the tabernacle structure. And these are all the hooks. And this is the wash basin. And this is the altar. And that's basically how they tried to reproduce this. This is a different picture. Now, this is our last picture that I want to show you is this. Very interestingly, these are the layers that is covered one on top of another, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. And on the outside is a badger skin, which is natively very brownish color. And that covers it, and it protects it from the sun. You know, red color is not very friendly to the sun. But this is how this entire structure was designed by God. So this is a divine blueprint. Now, inside, you would find these few things. If you remember, this is the north. This is the south. This is the west. Now, there are 4 pillars, 2, 3, 4, and on it hangs this curtain. And that would be the veil that separates the Holy of Holies. And this will be the holy place. See, on the south wall, you get the menorah. On the north wall, you get the table of showbread. And right in front of the Holy of Holies would be the incense table. And that's where you find the fire and the smoke that rises up. And if you recall in Exodus chapter 19, the Israelites saw God in the midst of a thick cloud of smoke with fire. And basically, this entire place in the holy place gives us that entire imagery reproduced, that God is overlooking his people of Israel. What is on top of the table of showbread? 12 pieces of bread. And this is the purpose of God, is to look after and take care of his children. And hence, you find that we have come through chapters 25 and 26 now. We've completed what it looks like. So what is our final conclusion? Our final conclusion is this. It is important for us to realize that God has given specific instructions that they cannot miss or cannot sin in that sense. The specific instructions is to teach them about God's plans and God's desires. They are to make it to the best of their abilities. In fact, later on, we'll see that God will supply some of the talent as well. But we are now going through the details of the tabernacle to reinforce that God is a very detailed God. He looks at things in great detail. And he wants his people to do it according to his details. Now, is it doable? And the answer is yes, obviously. See, the Torah that God gave as the laws to govern the people is just exactly the same. It can be done. The question is, do you want to do it? And so all these details of the tabernacle mirrors the law. And it is meant for them to realize God is serious. God's house, God's rules. And if you can do it for the tabernacle, you can do it for the nation. And that in itself gives us an incredible parallel, one that they have done it in the wilderness. And then when they look back at the wilderness, they should remind themselves that it can be done if they wanted to. And every component that they do has a meaning. Every law that God gives them has a purpose. It is not for whims and fancies of God. It is meant to govern them so that they know God, and there is order. There's light, there's order, and there will be no chaos. The moment they miss, then chaos will begin. And this will not look like how God had wanted it. And so, by conclusion, the tabernacle disclosure of so much detail can be done, must be done. God's mishkan, God's rules. And with this, we end chapter 26.